Welcome to Garden Views, interesting conversations with interesting people who have done and/or are doing interesting things. So sit back and enjoy. Welcome, everybody, into this week's episode of This Might Be a Garden of Doom. It might be a Garden View. We don't know yet because we're not sure exactly where we're going to go. So either way, same feed, and you're going to get a great show. I have two wonderful guests today. One you've probably heard referenced before, and the other is someone new, but they are both going to educate us on the foundations and the nuances and a lot of interesting stuff on belly dance. So you definitely want to tune in for this one. No, folks, there's no video. Sorry, you're going to have to look elsewhere for that. This is all audible. So we have our two guests, Oriana Brooks and Anna Nephilim. Anna became acquainted with myself and vice versa through the Nephilim Anthropology Conference headed out of the UK. A lot of guests and repeat guests have come from that show. And Oriana is Anna's a teacher and a mentor and a friend. So without further ado, I'm going to let them sort of lead the show because they are our experts. So I think we're going to kick it off with Oriana, and I thank you both and welcome you both, and thank you for your time.
Well, and thank you for having us. This is an awesome opportunity, and I love talking about what I do professionally to all kinds of different crowds to kind of get the ideas and the exposure out there to maybe people that haven't had an opportunity to see a ballet dancer or really know what it is or be able to take a class, or they're shy about taking a class because they're not sure what it is. So thank you for having us and giving us this opportunity. So as mentioned, my name is Oriana. I'm a professional international ballet dancer, and I'm also a member of the Council for International Dance of UNESCO, which is the United Nations. And I specialize in Egyptian ballet dance. And in Egypt, it is colloquially called belly dance. If you say that you're a belly dancer or that you take belly dance, they will know exactly what you're talking about. That term has become universal. In Arabic, though, it is referred to as raqs sharqi. And that is a specific term that is part of an umbrella or a family tree of the Arabic folk dance diaspora. So even though it is native to Egypt, it's tied to a lot of different influences. And of course, it's a very old art form. So it's had a lot of time to be exposed to other peoples, other traditions, other languages, until it has become what we know of as belly dance today. So raqs sharqi is really taking those folk dances and putting it on the stage. That was pioneered by a man called Mahmoud Reda, and he held a national troupe. It was not the government-sanctioned troupe of the time, but he was progressive in that he took all of these folk dances and a lot of Egyptian life, the people on the streets, the people from Alexandria, different songs, different just little tunes, almost like how the Brothers Grimm recorded a lot of fairy tales. He took all of those traditions that he grew up with in Egypt and he put it on the stage. And that was really what a lot of people call the birth of raqs sharqi, but it was one major influence of now it's not just dancing amongst common people, it's become a theatrical, professional art form, a lot like a Broadway show. So before that was developed, you had a mixture of different dances, but most notably raqs baladi. The word raqs in Arabic, R-A-Q-S, or sometimes K-S when it's anglicized, means dance. So raqs is dance, rakasa is dancer, and baladi is like saying folk or country or the people. So that refers to the people of Egypt. So raqs baladi is the original Egyptian-born national folk dance, as well as the term that they give to the people and the term to the music that is used for it. What I like to tell my students a lot is that it's kind of like country western music, where it was born, bred, and made in a specific country, and it has its own vibe, feel, dress code, music, and theme.
I have a dumb question. I think it's a dumb question. But the word rocks in Arabic, you said, means music or dance. I was always wondering where rock and roll came from. Does the Arab word rocks have anything to do with the origin of rock and roll? Because there's nothing musical about a rock.
It does not, but I will tell you that rock and roll was heavily influenced by West African music, in which case they were banging and doing a lot of the percussion either on boulders or on tree trunks or other hollow type instruments. So most likely, I don't know exactly the origin of rock and roll, but rock and roll as we know it in America was heavily influenced by blues music,
Sure.
which was brought over from the slave trade, which was influenced by Arabic music. And that is actually why it's called the blues, because Arabic music has blue notes in it. So there is a direct lineage between Arab Muslim musicians that were part of the slave trade going into America, creating early blues, early folk songs, and then it morphed into early rock and roll, which later became Motown.
Look at me stumbling into something that mattered.
Don't get me started.
Well, that's the point. The point of the show was to get you started. So, but yeah, let's get you back to your path, which as opposed to mine. So that's really cool. Because I think a lot of us, I mean, who knows when we were first exposed to belly dance? I mean, I feel like I remembered from when I was like a little kid, probably tied into like, Alibaba and the 40 Thieves and Arabian Nights and, probably Sinbad movies. And I'm in my 50s. So for a lot of people, maybe it was the Disney versions of Aladdin or who knows what it was. But, I think loosely people, different people, depending on where they first saw it, think Arabic. They might think Persian. They might think Babylonian. They might think it's Gypsy. Which of course Gypsy was a slur on Egyptian, and the actual Gypsies were of Indian, like India. So so maybe belly dance came from that path. That's sort of the reverse Silk Road. So I don't know. So it's interesting to hear that it sounds like from your perspective and your knowledge anyway that it is of an Arabic origin.
It is, but everything that you said is also correct because of the influence of the Silk Road and its proximity to it. People thought that a lot of people do believe that the Silk Road only flowed one direction; it went back and forth. So it does have a lot of influence of the Rajasthani people of India. The arms and the hands came from ancient Persia, and there was also a push from the sub-Saharan regions, such as Morocco, Libya, Kenya, Algeria, of some of the foot patterns. So if you imagine Egypt and the River Nile Delta as being smack dab in the middle, it got influenced by both directions historically through the migration of people as well as the invasions and occupations of the Ottoman Empire and the French Empire.
So we are talking mostly within the last millennia, not, ancient Egypt when we think about maybe, Akhenaten and Tutankhamun and Cleopatra at that time. So the origins are mostly the last, well, I don't know about the origins, but the westernization or the introduction to the Europe and then to the West is over the last, well, this is silly because obviously the West itself was mostly from the last 1,000 years. But the influences, the confluences meeting in Egypt is over the last millennia.
Correct. You can still see pharaonic dance in Egypt. They typically open every theatrical show with a pharaonic number to this day. So, but the pharaonic era was a completely different language, set of languages, really, different religion, of course, different culture, different dress, different music, and different entertainment. There is archaeological evidence to support that it did flow into Rax Baladi, because at some point in time you would have had pharaonic people existing with the new spread of the Ottoman Empire and thus the religion of Islam. So you would have had multiple languages being spoken at once and different religions being practiced at one point.
That's really cool. All right. What about, well, I guess it's the Ottoman Empire, so Turkey. I mean, I've seen belly dancers in a bunch of places, but probably the first time live was in Turkey I'm divorced, but I was on my honeymoon at the time. This was the late '90s, and that was part of the show. They took you over to the Asian side, which is most of Turkey, but we were on the western side, and it sounds like the Turkish influence came later.
I would say it came around the same time as the spread of the Ottoman Empire, but Anna is actually really into Turkish style. Would you like to contribute more into that, Anna? About the history of it or the Ottoman?
Yeah, sure. So the Ottoman definitely had a influence in this, as well as some of the Arabic influx of people, and then also the Rajasthani, and primarily, believe it or not, the Spanish gypsies. So flamenco had a very large impact around certain areas of Europe and then Africa, and you'll see a lot of, at least for people who are used to viewing these types of dances, you'll see a lot of those elements in those. So Turkish, I would say, was primarily the root of some of the Arabic dance, as well as some of the Rajasthani. Rajasthanis had a huge hand in a lot of the folkloric dances that you see in these places. So, and it's funny because Oriana touched on the Rajasthani briefly earlier, and they are largely in part responsible for the various types of dances that you see regionally. So they were, as you had mentioned, Jeff, one of the first traveling bardic people, we'll say. So the Turkish traditions, myself, I've taken a fond interest in Romani Havasi stylization, which is the dances and musicality of the Roma people. So, and theirs is a tradition that is very earthy, very pelvic, very focused like in pelvic movements, and very, very rich music. So they have had a lot of musical celebrations. They've also done it for mourning as well, because they're definitely a people that have gone through quite a bit as far as their places or lack thereof in society. So there's a lot of meaning and depth behind Romani Havasi. Now, Romani Havasi is just one portion of Turkish dance. I just want to clarify that. It's not the whole of Turkish dance itself. So Turkish dance can be very brooding sometimes, which is not that different from Romani Havasi, but Turkish can also be much more lively, again, more hip-based, but they also focus on a lot of floor work as well. So you'll see a lot of that happening. And depending on the environment, that can have an effect on the costumes, from depending on how large the skirts are, or if it's more of a nightclub type place, then they'll have more shiny, form-fitting type dresses. So
I want to get my mental geography here. Is Rajasthani, is that Indian, like the Raja, or is that something else?
Correct. Yes, they do have origins in the country of India. Yes. Okay.
And when you say Romani, is that like the peoples who are now in Romania?
Correct. Yes. Okay. They are seceded from the actual country of Romania itself.
Oh, really? And the other word, I think it was Havasi. Where is that?
Havasi is the stylization of the Roma dance. Mm-hmm.
And now, where are these Roma people who seceded from Romania? Are they still in Romania, sort of fighting one of those things like Kurdistan or Chechnya, or that we don't necessarily, it doesn't get publicized very much, or have they relocated into Turkey or elsewhere?
They they did a number of things. Many of them decided to either hang out outside of the like the larger city capitals, and this is where you hear the term, bandwagons and things like that. Or some, and then a smaller portion of them spread out into different countries looking for alternative ways of living. So that's there is a larger collection of them still in Romania to this day. So.
Okay. So, but if there was a state there really, it's more a state of mind or hope than there's actual physical geography right now being contested. Or am I wrong about that?
Could you reframe the question, please?
Yeah, I probably need to. Like, for instance, Quebec. Quebec is part of Canada, but people in Quebec, they want their independence. Palestine, in Gaza or Kurdistan. You can sort of define the borders within the borders of other countries. Is there a situation like that, or is it more we just want a homeland and generally in southeastern Romania? I'm making that up, obviously.
Well, they're tied to their homeland, even if they may not necessarily resonate with various ways of living, in the collective society. That's still their motherland. Mm-hmm. So some will still choose to remain there because of that, but others, they might marry off into different cultures, or they might strike out on a traveling endeavor. So it just kind of depends on the situation.
Sure. No, we understand that people go, and there's a diaspora of people in every circumstance, especially when there's a bad circumstance in their homeland. All right. Well, moving off of that unpleasantness, it's funny when you said this. It was some things were slow and brooding, and they were both sort of neighbors to sort of your Eastern, the sort of your Slavic, your Russian influence, and sort of their music is sort of oppressive and slow and powerful and brooding, but beautiful in its own way. I'm wondering if there's any sort of Slavic, or Russian influence in that, or it's just evolved independently.
Well, if you look at the nature of how dance and music has developed, since human history, there has been an influence from just about everywhere when it comes to musicality, or when it comes to certain instruments that are used. You might see a variation of a different type of instrument. So in that sense, and in terms of the Slavic impression, just to give you an example, everywhere has had an impression on somewhere else. So you see that throughout a lot of history. But I would say another area that was largely influenced by these various dances and stylizations was Greece. So they've also had that's also had a huge impact in their diaspora out there.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense, at least logically speaking. We talked a lot about geography and culture. Is there any religion that's particularly tied to it? I mean, obviously we talked about Islam and the spread of the Ottoman Empire, but I'm not sure if belly dance is tied to Islam, or it's just that's a convenience of that's the predominant religion in the Ottoman Empire, because obviously in India you think mostly of Hindu. Egypt is Islamic now, but it wasn't always. So are there religious roots, or is it just it's just an independent form, and it sort of morphs, adopts, evolves, gets adapted based on the country or even the locality or the peoples that have embraced it?
I'll handle this one. So it's a little bit of both, actually. As we've mentioned, a lot of our geographies and a lot of our migratory peoples, it's important to remember that a lot of other dances and a lot of other cultures have been influenced by Raqs Sharqi belly dance. But in order for a dance to be called belly dance, it is of Arabic origin, which of course means that the predominant countries that influence, feed it, have a living culture of having belly dancers as entertainers are going to be predominantly Muslim. There is a small Coptic Christian community that exists in Egypt, and there are some Christians in other countries, but for the most part, it is tied to the Arab-speaking world. There are other religions, so it's not accurate to say that it's a Muslim dance or it belongs to Islam, because as an art form, the dance belongs to anyone, which is why we can see Greek belly dance, Turkish belly dance. You have obviously Americans that belly dance. We're Americans, and it's been able to spread all over the world because the art belongs to the public. It doesn't belong to any creed per se. But when we are talking about belly dance, we are talking about the Arabic world. So a Western belly dancer kind of has to walk the line of understanding where cultural appropriation may happen, wherein understanding what the lyrics are saying, understanding the movements, understanding the music especially, is going to have that influence. And if you are going to be a part of the Muslim world or part of an Arab-speaking country, where you're like me and you go to Egypt, you cannot avoid the Islamic influence because it is part and parcel of the culture. There's very little separation of church and state in some Arab-speaking countries, so it is something that does come along with it, but it blends as a synchronized unit. So this is why it's interesting as a belly dancer, because Islam is typically conservative. Egypt is not as conservative as other countries, but it's a dance that's very free and it's very joyous and it's very expressive. So you're often performing for people that are very religious, but it doesn't mean that it's not okay or they don't accept it. They do. It's part of their culture. So it's seen as a cultural act.
I understand. I think so, but it's interesting because I think both of you know this, that I actually have an ex-girlfriend that is a belly dancer. Or was. We're not in touch, but this was at least 6 or 7 years ago, and a lot's changed in the world since then. And so, I remember they were very focused on the costume design, a lot of elaborate costumes, a lot of sewing, but a lot of also the ululation, the calls. And I wonder if in 2021, 2022, if that's still okay, or if that's considered cultural appropriation, or if you're doing it out of the love of it and you're clearly not mocking it. You've studied it. You're in a class. You're trying. If that's sort of still okay, much like if I was doing salsa, that if I put a rose in my mouth, that's part of the dance and that's okay. Nobody wants to see me dance. Well, let's imagine I could, or if I was doing the Kazakh dance and kicking my legs out. Where does And I know that art is always at the crosshairs of, of political correctness and free expression. So, is it different now than it was even a few short years ago?
I'll start, and then I would like Anna to chip in on that as well, because we've had many conversations, she and I, about this, where that's an excellent question that you bring up, and it's something that the belly dance community worldwide has been continuously asking itself about, because obviously as a lot of issues come up, like the issues of racism that we've been seeing in America, and cultural appropriation and cultural styles of dress, there are going to be those instances where you are not sure if you have crossed the line just because you're actively involved as a belly dancer, but you're not of origin of that country. So it is difficult at times, but my personal answer that I tell my students is, don't be offensive. Don't cross any lines of religion or spirituality. Translate your lyrics. Make sure that you know what's being said. And you really have to know the dance and when and where it should be used. All of these stylizations can have different meanings. It's not quite as literal in meaning as something like hula, where your hands are telling a story, or like in Rajasthani dance, where you are telling a story with the dance. but it is important to know when, where, and why you are doing this. And one of the things that Anna and I has talked about is that for a while here in America, there was a huge interest in belly dance, especially as a fitness craze. So it was being used only as a form of exercise, a lot like Zumba or pole dance has become a fitness craze, right? And there was a good period of time there in the 90s, at least, it started in the 90s, where the country was quite xenophobic. And the mention of anything Arabic or the Arabic language was kind of taboo for a while because we had Gulf War veterans, we had Iraq, we had issues with Afghanistan. So a lot of what became of the tradition of belly dance in America, which started in the 60s, was now morphing into influences coming in from other dance styles in order to make it more palatable for American audiences, including and up to removing any Arabic lyrics from music and changing the costuming. And so that brought up a lot of questions with a lot of people of, is this appropriate? Because now we're mishmashing things together and just making something that looks cool, but are we borrowing too much? Are we getting too far away from the roots? So Anna, I'll let you take over at that point because you do more fusion stylings than I do, and that's definitely a topic that comes up a lot.
Oh yeah, that's definitely been a hot controversial topic in multiple ways. And I'll follow with what Oriana was saying, in that it really the efficacy of the presentation is going to depend on which corner you're approaching it from. And there's, even despite some best efforts, there have still been situations to where there might be a slight issue with the costuming, or there might be a slight issue with the movements. And it's very important to pay attention to the minor details with these things, because ultimately what a person is doing, regardless of their ethnic background, is they are representing a core form of art from a particular culture. So as far as the stylization of the dances that I've done and studied, the tribal fusion or fusion as it's become known as these days, that began approximately the 80s and then really gained momentum in the 90s. That's when it really started becoming more popularized. There's and it's funny, we were doing a little geographical run around the world, and that's where you will see many elements of these different styles of dances. Believe it or not, Odissi, which is one of the oldest sacred and spiritual dances that has existed, largely a lot of the movement foundations of that plays a large part in fusion dance. So again, it really depends on what your objective is with these types of dances, but it's also keeping in mind to be culturally sensitive to certain things. In terms of, say, for example, a dance with more Arabic traditions, if you keep your face covered with a veil, that's not necessarily something that you'll want to remove, because that can have a spiritual implication to it. Now, in terms of fusion, it can be costuming, for example. If you're doing something that is more heavily Odissi based, it might, at that point, depending on who you talk to, part of your costuming to have certain type of decor, or including the bindi, because that's become very popularized in tribal fusion. It's it's lovely, but there's also, I know that there are some dancers that will not do it strictly on the basis of they feel that it's appropriating. And so it's up to the user in terms of what you decide to portray. But I always urge people who I talk to about these things to be wise about their choices, because it can really make or break someone's experience. Yeah. So
I don't think anybody from the troupe listens to the show, though I am still in touch with one of the folks who's been a guest on one of my shows. I just want to make it clear that there's no way in the world that they ever would have intentionally offended anyone or appropriated, and if the Overton window has shifted since then, they have absolutely shifted with it. But I don't think that they did. I'm not even educated enough to know, based on what you told me, if they did or didn't. The other question I have for you is there any sort of reverse pushback, so that there might be belly dancers that are not of a Muslim or conservative perspective that will do the style that usually requires or mandates the veil, but won't use it because they feel that is outdated. It's demeaning to women. Whatever the right, but are there any women who do that form of dance, but they refuse the veil on other reasons, or does the and I don't mean anybody. There's always somebody. I mean a movement that is notable, or do they say, this is the art form, I'm going to respect the art form?
I think I'm going to have Oriana answer this one as far as the hijab portion of it. So I feel like that's more up your alley.
Yeah, I was mentally gearing up here as I'm listening.
I could tell.
So let me start off by saying you're allowed to like stuff. Like, I'm a white woman born in Florida, in a little town called Tampa. So you're allowed to like things. You are allowed to get into things. You're allowed to, like you said, if you want to take salsa classes and you want to, use the music from salsa, yeah, absolutely. When we talk about appropriation, or we talk about making changes, like if you want to use a costuming piece, such as a face veil, you're talking about, you have to take it in context. And if it's a requirement of that dance, that is something that you really shouldn't stray from. There are very few Arabic folk dances that require women or the men also to have a head covering. But if it is part of the costuming, then yes, the professionals do wear it. This would include things like Nubian dance, Malaya Lef, Iskandarani, and other types of coverings. It's not just women that wear head coverings. In Islam, men also do as well. So what we're talking about here is something that has become part of the integrity of that folk dance itself. As it comes to belly dance, aka Raksharki, also sometimes called Oriental dance, women are not required to wear head coverings. Men are not required to wear head coverings. It is seen as a completely different type of theatrical dance. And I mean that loosely, and I'll circle back to that in a second. But you're not required to wear any niqab or hijab or jilbab. You're not required to wear any sort of religious covering at all. And in Egypt, specifically, wearing the head covering is voluntary. You do not have to be covered, even if Muslim or not Muslim. Most Muslim women may choose to, because they feel that is what makes them more comfortable. They are more conservative, and it's their way of expressing their faith. A lot of men still wear the traditional head covering and the galabea, which is like a long cloth robe, as opposed to t-shirts and jeans like we wear. But when I'm there, I am not covered. No one says anything to me. The only time I would have to put on a hijab is if I were to enter a mosque. And then, sure, my husband would have to wear the traditional wear as well, because you're entering a sacred space.
Of course, yeah.
So when it comes to me as a belly dancer, I've never had to cover. It's not that. I mean, you've seen the costumes. Sure. they're not conservative. So that is outside of that. If there is a concern over keeping those traditional coverings, then that would be based on a case-by-case basis of a folkloric regional dance.
Well, that makes sense. I think it sounds like you respect both the art and respect the culture, and both those two things, because of where they've originated and gained popularity, they've already reconciled it for you. It's already sort of been decided. Um,
Yes, absolutely. And right now in Cairo, you'll see a lot of the dancers are looking more and more Western. They really they love straight hair. They are styling their makeup a lot differently because they're starting to see things like the Kardashians. So it's this kind
Great.
of almost reverse exoticism. Yes, it's very interesting. Where in America they think you should be dark skinned, dark haired, and you should be kind of swarthy looking like Jasmine in Aladdin. But when I went to Cairo, or if you see dancers from Dubai, even they have a very Americanized look, very European looking.
Well, exotic is just depends on which side of the hill or valley you were born on, I guess.
That's
Um,
exactly right.
that is fine. Like when you were telling me earlier, talking about how the '90s and the the problems with 9/11 and Afghanistan and Iraq, all I was thinking is, I'm not sure that we're better now. I think we might be worse. And even though 25 years ago there were no halal restaurants, there was gyros were new. Nobody knew they were supposed to say gyros. There was now these things are every place, and as a people we seem to be even less tolerant. But that's a different show, I suppose. It just. Maybe I'll edit that out. Who knows? Anyway, that's me, not you. You can refrain from that part. You guys can stay innocent. All right. So let's have a little bit of fun. You said that you were an international dancer and that you were involved with UNESCO, which is the heritage and art recognition arm of the United Nations. So obviously, you mentioned that you've been in Cairo. So are there sponsored tours? Tell us where you've been and who arranges it and some of the logistics involved, etc.
There are a lot of tours, and honestly, like my honest answer is I went as a dancer and I went as part of the team that I dance with, and I was with other performers. But let's say you just wanted to go as a tourist, there is everything from tours that just stay on the Nile to if you want to go see the tomb of Tutankhamun in the Valley of the Kings. There's archaeological tours, there's cultural tours. There are so many that you can do. In general, what I'm going to say is that as an American citizen, or I would really say as anyone, you're going to be very respected. I felt no sense of danger there. I felt comfortable walking around. Enough people spoke English, or at least enough English that we could communicate pretty easily. It is helpful, though, if you are with a tour that has an Arabic-speaking guide, especially if you want to do any shopping. Because like most parts of the world, there is some bargaining, and there might be some price changes. And if you have someone that speaks Arabic, or you have someone that's escorting you and taking you from place to place, it will make your life a lot easier. Cairo traffic is nothing to play with. And going from place to place can be pretty stressful. It's not where like you go and you rent a car. You're not going to be renting a car in Cairo. There's no lines on the street, and they do whatever they want. Like
there's no lanes, no stoplights, six lanes of pure traffic. I remember being on the bus there and being absolutely terrified.
Yes, that would not work for my linear little brain.
It requires a certain embracing of chaos if you're on the streets in Egypt.
Well, how long do you have to train? Who do you have to know? What organization has to accept you? Do you apply to get I guess paid by an organization to travel the world and do this form of dance in places like Cairo or wherever?
That's entering into a whole nother realm. If you wanted to be a professional in Cairo, it's like I'm not sponsored. Like when I go over, I teach, and then that's my form of payment.
I see. You pay your own way.
Right, but if you wanted, let's say you wanted to be a professional Cairo dancer, you're going to go there on your own, and you're going to pay for your visas, and a lot of girls get managers, Arabic-speaking managers, to help them and assist them with that, and some do it on their own. Some people make enough connections that they can maneuver themselves around, but it's just like if you're a performer here, you're going to be negotiating and getting those gigs and trying to get on the stage in order to make your money.
That sounds fair enough. And as you might imagine, with a show that is called Garden of Doom, even though Garden Views is a little bit different, a lot different, I might have some people who might be into a little bit some conspiracies, or they might be into the government waste crowd. And so now we are hearing that the UN and UNESCO is not paying massive amounts of money for you when you go there, even if it's under a banner, that you're basically you're paying your own way and you're teaching to subsidize it. It's not like there's this global organization that's like it's not like the Olympics where everything you're getting 3 meals a day and you're flying first class or anything like that.
But right, when as a member of UNESCO, it's not to be a sponsored traveler or to do anything of that nature. It's as a representative on the council, so that I'm contributing information to UNESCO. They give me information, and I'm able to speak with folkloric dancers from all over the world to exchange ideas and help progressive ideas and initiate actions and protect other folkloric dances. Nobody on that council is being told what to do or being paid or accepting money in order to go do this. So all of the information from there is from their own research.
Perfect. How long do you think it would take the average skilled dancer? How many years of training before they themselves could, perform comfortably at a point where they merit being, paid for it on a professional basis?
I'm going to have Anna chime in on this too, because I have two answers for that. One, in my professional opinion as a teacher, at least 2 years of consistent study if you want to do just one style of dance and go be in a restaurant and entertain and just be an entertainer, right? So that you have at least a good foothold on the music and what to do as an entertainer. For me personally, I didn't really start performing professionally for about 5 years. So it also depends on who your teachers are, what you want to do, what you're studying. If you're doing pure belly dance, I would say at least 2 years of consecutive study. That doesn't mean that people don't get hired before that, though. If somebody puts themselves out there and they want to do it and they accept the pay, that is them. But they may not be at the same level. So, Anna, what do you think about that? Like, when did you start?
So in my given history, I started studying when I was 17. Funny story, it was actually a gift set given to me by a friend of mine, and it was actually radically well put together for its time. And I didn't start, I'd say, performing belly dance because, I studied with a few various teachers in my hometown, and, back then YouTube was, still booming. I did not start performing until I want to say it was about 22, 23 years old. And I was performing at a club back then, was a Gothic nightclub, actually. And at that time, I wasn't necessarily looking to become a professional dancer, because when it comes to belly dancing or folkloric dancing or any type of dance or any type of dance medium, one has to look at what is their driving force behind it. What's the prerogative? Is it self-expression? Are you desiring to contribute a fine arts piece? Are you wanting to become? Are you career driven and you want this to become your field? What is the purpose behind it? And at that point in my life, I wasn't looking to become a career-based dancer. You know, I loved the art and I loved sharing it, and I loved the style of music that I was able to put it to. But when it comes to in terms of pay and navigating the professional world, again, that's very much a regional based question, not just in the States, but in various countries. And then B, it really depends on the market, how many other dancers there are in that given area at that point in time, experienced, what type of training that a person has had. Because, you know, at the end of the day, if a person is looking to make this into a career, you know, there is the matter of, you know, selling yourself. You know, you are the brand, your presentation is the brand. So it really just boils down to multiple factors. It took me, and Oriana's actually had a hand in my career development, which I'm incredibly grateful to her for. It took me, I'd say, probably about 10 years before I even started considering it a career option. Up until that point, it had just been an artistic self-expression and, you know, at various points, you know, a way to be involved in community events and festivals and things like that. So ultimately, it depends on the person's vision and how involved that they want to become.
Sure. And probably some people have more natural talent than others, of course. Well, and we'll keep out prodigies out of it. What is something that I should have asked that I didn't ask? And there's probably more than one thing.
I will start with, I would say one of the most common questions that I get is belly dance only for women? And
I know it's not. I know the answer to that. It's not.
Is that why you didn't ask? Because you already knew the answer?
Yeah, but you know what? A few times I said I should make that clear, but both of you made that clear in conversation, but I'm glad you emphasized it because it was in the back of my mind that I'm not sure if a casual listener would have picked up on that or not. But yeah, I'm sorry.
For sure. And, you know, sometimes it's, you know, it's heavily marketed towards women, I think for obvious reasons. But obviously folklore dance can be performed by anyone, and there are many very famous and extremely talented male belly dancers. So Raksharki is not just for women. If you do want to take a class, sign up for it. Go ahead and sign up for it. Anybody, any gender, any age, any fitness level, it's entirely appropriate for everyone.
Right, and actually, when Anna began her historic version, or the I think you say herstory, so I want to say it both ways. That you mentioned that it was a gentleman who started the troupe, so I figured that I assumed that he was a dancer as well, also. But so we've now underscored that a few times. What else haven't I? I mean, I must not have asked, or at least are there topics that I didn't get us to that you feel are very important or helpful, or just share like a fun story with us?
Should I go into the taboo one? What do you think?
What's the taboo one?
It's not a try before you buy type situation.
I'm for the taboo. The host is for taboo.
I think Anna's referring to oftentimes when you're a professional dancer, you get quite a bit of negative attention from people. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
I tend not to dwell on that too much, but it can happen. And I would say that piggybacks off of, when do you decide it's time to become a professional? It's you exit the world of academia and of dance art, and you also incorporate the world of showbiz, which has its own caveats to it. And some of that is that, some audience members may not know how to behave themselves because of the stereotypes of Oriental fantasy.
I was in formal security on Just very few occasions. And one of those just meant that I stayed in a car not too far away. I mean, it wasn't like I had to do anything. But yeah, I mean, I think everybody understands from just a common sense living life perspective that if someone's going to be in the physical arts, that someone there might be people in the audience who get over enthusiastic. So yeah, understood on that, and especially if you work for tips, because it's then you physically have to get close enough for someone to touch you in certain cases, and that has its own sort of world of issues, and you're not typically in a place where there's 8 bouncers that are 350 pounds.
I would agree with that. I've had, I would say that all of my bad tipping or bad dance experiences were when I was younger and when I was first starting to professionally dance, mostly because I just didn't know any better. Sometimes you get put into situations that you wouldn't expect as a normal person. So it's unique. But I would say that's part of the showbiz aspect of it. And, it's not something that you ever have to encounter unless you want to become a professional. If you wanted to study the art form, you may never have a problem.
Yeah. Everything has its own sort of hazards and whatnot. But even, I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, even on Monday Night Raw, a professional wrestling show live, a fan dove over security and tackled one of the stars on live TV. So, I mean, stuff happens, and this is a 220-pound dude who's supposed to be a professional fighter. So stuff happens. So anyway, I'm sure it's part of the street smartness, whatever that comes with the learning of any trade.
Exactly. Yeah, and some of that too just is an awareness of your personal boundaries. What is okay and what is not okay. And that can go for multiple elements in this career field, not just specifically like any Leviscuous natures of customers. It just, a lot of it involves just being aware of certain cornerstones, certain points to expect in this type of field, or that you might possibly encounter. So knowledge is power, as they say.
Is Leviscuous a very, very impressive way of saying horny?
Call it what you will.
Okay. Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure I've ever heard that word before. And, I've heard a lot of words, but that's a good one. I like it. That's fabulous.
That's a $5 word. That's a good one.
Oh,
yeah. Good, Anna.
Yeah.
That's good.
I'd give at least
I win the literary competition tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So far, anyway, you're way ahead. Yeah, for sure. You've had actually quite a few terrific words, but I think some of them are inside trade words that probably Oriana knows just as well as you do. Me, I mean, you had me back at Havasi or whatever. I'm like, wow. All right. So what is the most? I want to say exotic, but now I can't use exotic because of what would be the most exotic from an East Coast United States perspective where you have performed. And you can't say Cairo because we already know Cairo.
What is like the most magnificently Oriental location, or like the strangest gig I've had, or I mean, God, this could go so many different directions.
You can do both, and you can define it any way you like. I absolutely encourage you to own this.
Okay. I feel like for myself, man, I'm really having to dig here. In terms of interesting, when I was a younger dancer and I was dancing we have a town called Tarpon Springs here that is almost completely occupied by immigrated Greek people. And I was dancing there at what's called a uzuri, which means it's a bar. And one of the musicians that I was friends with came up to me and he pointed to a man who was sitting in like a back shadowy table and had all these people around him. And he said, "That's the U.S. Greek ambassador." And I was like, "I'm sorry." So, yeah, he was such of a high status that he actually had the waitress throw money on top of me. He wouldn't be fussed to do it himself. And he wanted to talk to me. after the show was over, and he had a hard time believing that I was an American. He tried speaking to me in Greek first, and shook my hand and everything, and he wanted to take me out for food, but it was like 2 a.m. already, and I looked at him and I said, I have work in the morning, and he's like, what do you mean this isn't your only job? So that was my funny story of kind of like being in a different world. So, but I would say in terms of exotic location, I mean, I don't know. I guess some of the venue halls for weddings, I feel like it doesn't get very exotic in terms of that unless you're in a beautiful theater.
Okay. Anna?
I don't know if I have as extravagant of a story as she does on this.
You don't have like the Count of Monte Carlo or...
No, not yet. I will say at an event that I was invited to perform at, this is when I was living in North Carolina. I'm really trying to remember the name of the area. I want to say it was maybe Greensboro, Greenstown, but the location that we were at was definitely earned the name Green. It was this very and to me, this is extravagant because, you can put me in a palace or you can put me out in the woods and, it'll still be, a phenomenal experience for me anyways. But it was the most lush, green, and alive place I had ever been in my entire life. And there were these natural streams that were surrounding the entire property, and there were waterfalls everywhere, and there was natural crystal in the ground, so it really was this paradise like grounds that was just absolutely breathtaking to see and be a part of. So to me that was my few days in heaven. So
great.
I haven't had a theater experience yet. Hoping so at one point, but for now, I still have some amazing memories to float off of. So.
Okay. Well, we should definitely allow both of you an opportunity to promote whatever it is that you like to promote. I know that Oriana is an author. I know that you both do take bookings. So, I guess we can start with Oriana. Just promote whatever it is that you would like to promote. Free promotion zone.
Thanks. So the easiest way to contact me or find me is to go to my website at orianabellydancer.com. I'm also on all the socials at Oriana Belly Dance, and you can find me there, see all my videos and photos. My book is called Rocks to Riches. It's available on Amazon in both paperback and Kindle formats. And it's the first ever self-help motivational guide for belly dancers that was ever written.
Cool.
So I teach twice a week online.
Oh, great. Is that a YouTube or is it your own webpage?
It's through me. I'm using Zoom, just like pretty much everyone else is right now, right?
Yep.
So Tuesday nights are my beginner classes. Thursday nights are my advanced classes. And if you go on my website, you can sign up for either class right through there.
Wonderful. Okay. Anna?
All right, so you can find me under Anadonus Nephilim at Rhythmic Enterprises, and that's mostly a fine arts and collaborative effort business. I do a lot of collaborations with musicians and with other dancers in fine arts projects or haflas, so they can find me there. I'm also available for parties and private bookings. I do workshops sometimes, and I also do dance parties as well, so they can find me on your staple social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and they can visit my website, rhythmicenterprises.com, and that's the best way to get in touch.
Okay, excellent. And I can tell you that they're both very responsive, and thank you very much for joining us. Last chance, is there anything that I forgot, anything I should have asked, anything you want to add that I omitted in my ignorance or meanderings?
We have super sparkly, glamorous costumes. We have the best costumes.
We really do.
A lot of peacock feathers.
Costume.
What are those called? Zills? The little symbols, little finger symbols.
Yeah, the finger symbols. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We also dance with fire too, so we're also pyromaniacs.
Well, that sounds lascivious. What was that word you used before?
Lascivious.
Yes, that sounds lascivious.
Not the correct context for that term. But...
I had a feeling, but it was a bad try nonetheless. Well, on that swing and a miss, I think that we're gonna say good evening to our guests. Thank you so much. Please check out their site. If you have any interest, do inquiries, buy the book, sign up for classes, book these fine artists. I'm not going to give out the geographies, but I'm sure that they're on their website, that they give their radius performance. So anyway, thanks everyone for listening. Tune in next time. And I think that, we're not going to hold this, but I think we're going to have Anna again for possibly other topics that go into more of my typical meanderings. So maybe she'll join me for some of those. And Oriana's always welcome too. I mean, we just don't know it yet. But thanks very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for the information. Thank you for educating the audience on both the history, the nuances, the foundation, and some of the realities of belly dance. And I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Jeff.
Thank you. Appreciate you.